We have one. First up, item A, discussion of regular agenda items and consent agenda. Or we have workshops in here.
Executive session.
So workshop. Three.
Just a second.
It's all the electrical improvements for what we'll look at wastewater treatment.
Yeah, you have to do the electrical improvements first before you can do these things.
Yeah. Trying to put pump sets down. Makes sense.
Yeah, kind of necessary.
Item 5.
Yes.
Stand. Any fight.
No. He does that.
Yeah.
10. Thank you. All right, City Manager Donna Barron is going to kick off and introduce our consultant handling the PowerPoint presentation on the public safety complex.
So before I introduce, let me kind of give you a little bit of background. So as you know, we've been talking about a public safety building for a while. This started in 2020. In 2020, we came to retreat and we said we need to replace a central station and the police building. Council agreed, and then COVID hit. And so we delayed, we came back in 2021, and we said we've looked at it again. We obviously are coming out of COVID, it appears. We think maybe the timing's better, and we went through another presentation. We said that the building now costs about $68 million. If we delay, it can go up to $80 million, and you said move forward. That's what came out of retreat. So at that point, we talked about a November election. What I wanted to make sure, what was really important to me, was that the number was accurate. I didn't want to get into another situation like we had with Thrive, when we got a bond program approved, we turned around, and almost immediately we were short funds. So I wanted to evaluate exactly where we were, because there's crazy things going on in the economy right now. And also, I wanted to make sure we were taking a deep dive into the project to make sure we were really accurate about the components and the fit on that side. And so with that, we hired Chris Quadra. Chris has worked with us on a number of projects, and he really is one of the best project cost estimators that I know of. He's done a great job for us on 3 buildings at this point in time. And so we hired Chris, and then Chris brought in Don Wurtzberger. Did I get that correct? Okay. And Don's done lots of public safety buildings, like over 100. So he's an expert in the public safety field. And he spent a lot of time with our police chief and with our fire chief, took a really deep dive, and came up with some new facts and numbers for you. With that said, before we talk about what exactly those new numbers are, let's talk about what's going to fund this project. So my clicker man, there you go.
Okay, 1 second.
Keep going.
Yep. Good? Yep.
Keep going.
Okay, so, my name's Chris Quadra. Thank you for those kind words. I've got the clicker right here,
Okay.
right? So, this is a program and budget update, and we'll give you a little bit more background than maybe more than you want to know. Talk about some recent cost trends, parking, and we have 3 potential options for you tonight. Really 4, but one of them is a 2-part option, and we'll talk a little bit about next steps. Donna?
So as I just said, we received direction in 2020, COVID hit, then we came back in 21, we did the deep dive, and so once we started seeing the new numbers, we had conversations with Hilltop. Hilltop is our financial advisor to look at the whole debt picture. So you can flip to the next slide. And so what we wanted Hilltop to do, we want to look into the future, right? And so we said, let's look at what we have now in debt. So our existing debt obligations, about $120 million. We have a remaining authorization of about $29.7 million. We have sold certificates of obligation for the new fleet facility building. And we're projecting that the public safety building could be up to $95 million. We're going to show you those options that Chris just talked about. And we know that as early as 2023, we're going to need to do another street program, street and trail program. And we would like that to be around $100 million. That's what we are estimating the projects might amount to. And so the question, and plus we're going to refund Castle Hills. Castle Hills is a little different issue because new values are coming on. They're going to support that debt that's coming on. So we asked Hilltop to take a deep dive into that and look at the growth in TAV, the interest rates, the debt program anticipated, and tell us, can we do all these things and keep the debt rate flat. Your debt right now is 12 cents. And so they took a deep dive and they came back and they said, yes, you can do all of those things and you can keep your debt rate flat. So I'm going to let Dave talk a little bit about kind of what goes into that thought process.
Sure, I'll click for anybody, just don't let that get around.
He's an easy clicker.
Thank you, Council. The title of the slide is Manage Debt Rate, but it probably should read how we manage the debt program to fit within that debt rate. Ms. Barron had mentioned that we have that level rate of 12.23 cents, and to the extent that we're able to stay within those parameters, that's what we will do. So again, those parameters are set by council, so you give us directives and say, we want to maintain a level tax rate. So we work within those confines for that. Donna also mentioned our forward-looking analysis that's prepared annually. We've had Hilltop Securities doing this probably for 20 plus years. They have such a strong familiarity with the city that the nuances that come into balancing or managing debt, they already have that feel. So they've given us some really good numbers, and I think you've seen them, folks that have been on the board in the past, the results of those debt programs that we've had. Again, we apply conservative assumptions when we prepare this analysis, primarily in the interest rates that are used and the projections for the assessed value. Those two factors have the biggest impact to determining whether or not we can afford a certain bond program. So we're very careful to manage that. The actual results, in my experience, I've just been here 3 years, been involved in, not quite 3 years, but 3 bond issues, 2 years. The actual results versus what the assumptions that we've been used, they've been a lot more favorable, so we've been able to manage that debt very well. And one example is the 2015 bond election program. Originally, when that went to a vote, it was planned to be a 10-year program, but because of the conservative approach that we take to assess values and interests, we're actually projecting to complete that within an 8-year period. Again, Donna mentioned we take into account existing and future planned issues. We're not just going to say, hey, we can afford it in a single year and not worry about the out years. We actually go out the full 10 years with this analysis. Actually, it goes out a little bit further. It goes out 10 years from beyond the 2023 bond election. Some of the strategies that we use, there's a number of strategies that Jason Hughes has been introduced to us. One would be the structured debt payments. Now, as old debt falls off, we're able to backfill that with the new debt. So we can generally keep a level principal amount so we know what to expect from year to year. We can also increase the principal payments as years go on based on the assessed value growth. So again, we're living within that parameter that we have. Rate times assessed value gives us the total debt that we can absorb, and we manage within that. We also balance using 16-year and 20-year maturities. Now typically we've been in that 16-year period, but one of the things that we will do is we will match the use of the funds for the actual project. So a project that might have a shorter lifespan, like a street, we would have a shorter maturity. For longer maturities, such as this proposed public safety building, will go out a little bit further because the life expectancy of that will be much longer. Again, I think we would, want to stay in that 16-year period, but there are some allowances. And again, using both of those maturities, we're able to make this bond program work. And then also we'll take advantage of refunding opportunities. We always build a call option into these bond issues so that when the markets are right, we're able to refund those bond issues and get some more savings so we can manage that very well there. Let's see if there's anything else I've got. Oh, just one other, regarding the debt and the repayment schedules. Currently, we're expected to pay down 71% of the debt in the next 10 years. So within 10 years, we'll have almost 3/4 of the debt. If we were to issue no more debt, it would be off the books. So that's one of the things that the bond rating agencies look at, how quickly the bond comes off, or the debt comes off the books. So again, those are all things that are used to manage that debt, and we would continue to do this moving forward. So,
Questions?
questions?
I was having questions about this yesterday, and you've just answered every single question I had as far as that goes. I was worried about what that debt load was going to be like.
Thank you.
Okay. So some background, I think Donna has talked to you about a couple of discussions at retreats in the 2020 and 2021. Beginning middle of April, when this council said, hey, let's get serious about this, we did the deep dive that Donna mentioned, and we went back into the program and budget. We did a peer review, and then we felt that it was important to update our needs assessment. So that's where Don Wurzberger came in and looked at all of the spaces, shared spaces and not, and interviewed police and fire, and we began to explore 3 different options to see where we might offer some choices to council. So on the 29th of June, we presented those 3 options, and we came up with a 4th one. We had A, B, and C, and as a consultant, you typically like to hear that, hey, there's the option we should present to council. So you come out of that room go in with 3 and you come out with 1. But because of the creativity of the people in the room, we ended up with 4, A and A1. So that's the menu tonight, is options A, A1, B, and C. So let's dive into those after we do a little look at the recent cost trends. This is my hobby, but it's so I have to always throw a slide in about this, or 2. And then we'll talk about parking, then we'll go into the options. So, as you all know, there's a lot of demand out there, and there's a lot of severe supply constraints, and there's a lot of labor shortages going on. That's sort of a perfect storm. We've never seen prices going up this fast, and they're predicted to extend. This is a Wall Street Journal article that said that they believe that these 3 things will keep going at least through Q1 of 23. So one of the risk management approaches we use, because the market is so volatile right now, we built into all of these cost models escalation running at a ferocious pace. And if it doesn't happen, because we all know there's been downturns, I'm sure those of you who follow lumber know that it tripled in price in the beginning of this year, and it's already come back down 30%. Nothing else has done that. So the question is, what do we do if we don't see that kind of escalation? What do we do with that money? And what we do is we have scope that we design to construction documents, and we park it in we promise the voters the budget that we know that we can make if escalation continues. And if it turns down, we haven't overpromised. We have some scope alternates that we can use the bond money to buy. So that's what I mean by scope is the contingency. It's having a program that is flexible enough to add some scope if escalation takes a downturn. And what the pain that you see a lot of municipalities seeing right now is when they passed bonds in November and didn't have any money in for escalation, they can't deliver what they promised the voters. So that's the most important thing, is promises made have to be kept. This is I'm sorry?
You read some of our plaques.
Well, I think it's I'm a taxpayer too, right? So we all write that check. So long story short, this is a Q1 Associated General Contractors came out with this at the end of the last quarter. The supply chain is a whole nother presentation, but it's a mess right now. But this is the one that I think really drives it home. This is Clark Dietrich makes all the steel studs for commercial construction, maybe 70–80% of them or so. This is a 10% increase that was noticed in May to take effect on June 1. This is in addition to the May 3rd increase that was noticed in April. And they had notices in December for January and 10% in February, 10% in March, 10% in April, 10% in May, and 10% in June. And recently Clark Dietrich just extended all of their delivery dates by 3 or 4 months. So that's what we're up against. That's compounded, that's almost 60 some odd % increase in materials. So you're a subcontractor, you're bidding, you see these notices coming across your desk, and you're baking in more, and you're also raising your profit margins. So I guess enough about the horror story out there. Maybe some good news. I'm going to let my friend and colleague Don explain why co-locating these two public safety organizations in one site has some benefits.
So we had a lot of great work sessions, individually with fire, staff, and leadership, and police, and then also with them together. And so my goal was trying to find and identify those spaces that we could leverage opportunities for sharing, which drives square footage, which drives cost. And I will commend both groups, and it probably harkens back to city leadership, the culture. I don't encounter this a lot on projects practicing around Texas and the country. It's usually water and oil. When it comes to police and fire sharing things, it's very hard to get them to even agree on sharing a fitness room, but I thought this was just a great capture to just show all the different, I get it tonight.
We told you not to touch that.
You did tell me.
Actually, that was me, Don.
Just for that visual, for all of you, to realize the amount of really square footage in the building that is being shared, from the training center to the fitness, to areas of support out in the parking structure that I'll get into a little bit more in depth here on option A. But I thought it was valuable to just show what is really being shared and captured within a co-located facility.
Don, you might point out that the base of this is really the prior study that was done.
Great point. And so my efforts and task on sort of an accelerated mode was just to dig in to find out the true needs of police and fire, separate the needs from the wants, the wish list and things like that. What are the true basic needs? But, this original layout you've seen of sort of that L, no work was done to change that, adjust that. That'll be really an exercise when design starts up. It may ultimately move forward in that. I would probably predict, based on projects I've worked on, it'll reach some point where you may not even recognize that first blush rollout there. But that just remained as sort of a base template to test fit a lot of the other things on this site. The square footage, the shared areas, the vehicular movement, things like that.
Okay, thank you. So this is the existing parking, and it's split up between public and city. This count was done by staff, and we come up with 608 existing spaces. So I think you're all familiar with this site. And then we have a phased approach to the construction and how it's going to impact parking. Obviously, parking is a very big concern for all of your constituents. So, Don, you want to talk about this a little bit?
So, as you all are fully aware, you're living in this, and just the huge driver that parking is on municipal complexes. Further complicating that is how do we now, go in and do demo and overlay new buildings within those dire parking needs. But from what staff had given us, we started looking at possibly how this could be phased to try to have the minimal impact on the parking needs for public and for staff. To where, you know, this lighter blue could be a phase one by a construction manager taking over that site. And then you realize, yes, you're losing some of those staff, but Chris will get into, you know, part of what's in the cost is, you know, temporarily relocating some staff to other spaces. But as we were going through this, you know, it started gathering some momentum and energy of the idea of maybe we build the parking structure first. You know, that's a deliverable that maybe is only half the time frame of the rest, designing the rest of the building. Let's turn the, you know, construction manager loose of doing that, because what that opens up then is the ability to possibly temporarily move fire operations into there. We make that first level high enough for fire apparatus. The upper levels, the parking structures could be where you park all the trade contractors and the construction, you know, housing or temporary facilities are all in there. And that way there, they aren't bleeding out elsewhere on the site and start impacting all these public and other staff areas going on there. So that was some of the thought that went into how this could start, you know, possibly being phased out. And so this is what you've seen before. And so we wanted to bring that back as just sort of that visual of the previous study of really, you know, gathering up all the different areas with possibly that new construction of an L parking structure here, to where we can take the existing 608 and drive it upwards to 876. That's valid for a couple reasons. One, there's a lot of special use vehicles that need a home that shouldn't be out in the elements. You've made the investment in those assets. They're very expensive vehicles. Get them somewhere that they can be under shelter, but also future growth projections. You know, we get into these programs, you're going to see, you know, we aren't doing just a snapshot for today. Some of them aren't even doing it for 15 years. We're looking full city build out of what fire staff and police staff can ultimately be in this building. And so that's what that starts absorbing over the years.
And you've seen this before. This is from Park Hill's study, the earlier one. Thought they did a nice job there. And then this is where you can get into the actual phasing.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, it's a bit I talked about before, where, you know, this could be the very first kickoff on that site of carving through there and trying to tightly do that perimeter and minimize the impact to other parking that's going on there. Build that, and that becomes then your relief outlet for construction and other staff for parking. And then once that is done, then that frees, you know, this portion of the site up and those staff in there. As we said, we've had some brainstorming to where it could be, you know, fire apparatus and fire, you know, operations are in the first floor of that parking garage. You know, it could be a stretch visually thinking about it, but there's ways to make that happen that then free this up for demo. We haven't moved them off-site, incurred those costs, and it just starts, you know, flowing in different phases for the existing site.
And there's a total of probably 4 or 5 phases, but these are the 2 that affected parking. And Donna wanted to be very clear that you have to tell us how you're going to park it, not just when it's done, but when it's during construction, what's going to happen to all those parking spaces. That was our charge. So I think we'll take a breather here and see if there's any questions on parking. Okay, so this is the first option. It'll be followed by a graphic, but we are proposing in option A, 116,000 square feet is what's needed for the needs to be met to the full build out. And the overall facility is an A. This is a format that you can use to compare them. You don't have to take notes. We have a comparison slide after them all that we'll linger on, and we can look at this. But police facility is an A, the fire facility is an A. There's no real compromises in operations at full build. In fact, we have great confidence that it'll be a really nice upgrade for the people who work there to get them fully functional and provide better service. So this is a $96.7 million project. Now this has in it moving everyone who needs to be moved out of police and fire to temporary facilities and renting space for them and then moving them all back. So they're gonna have to spend 16 months in an office environment. We're not gonna move the communication center, and we're not gonna move some of the other pieces, but everyone who has to move, moves out and moves back.
So that's kind of a worst-case scenario. Keith and I talked about some other options. We've talked about the finish out of the basement. You know, could we actually move PD into the basement during that interim period? Maybe. The fire department, we may have some room on the second floor for fire admin. So we need to still pursue all of those options, but this is kind of a worst-case scenario that we would actually rent that space.
Okay, so to get your head wrapped around it, Don?
Sure, again, using that same template that was before we talked about from the previous study, you start seeing where police could occupy a combination of 2 and 3 stories, fire in its original spot, that was on that site plan, the master plan from the previous study, fire admin, firehouse underneath there, and then the apparatus bays and support. What I found incredibly exciting that came out of this from working with staff and some of their ideas, police and fire always have a large collection of stuff that needs to be stored. It can be stored in a more industrial setting. It doesn't need to be in a 500 square foot nice building. And so a lot of projects I'm working on, we actually look for a support building option to move all that to at roughly half the square foot cost. So the parking structure, we started looking at what can we put on the first floor with the little higher clearances that would be conditioned space. And it came to be evidence and property and crime scene. Why bring all sort of that, questionable stuff into the building? It's an environmental and safety issue, especially with more of the boutique, drugs that officers may encounter and stuff that they can just drive in here and drop it off here and not walk it into your main building. Fire came up with a great idea. Why don't we put quartermaster there? That serves fire and police, and they usually need just quick vehicle access, walk in, grab something, and order, and off they go. This is where a lot of the special use vehicles are being parked. This support building, is a combination of some storage for traffic, the drone setting, crime scene vehicles, other, things that just, collectively work best out there, weapons cleaning, armory, things like that want to be close for deliveries, want to be in a little more robust setting. So that all leaves here and goes out there. And so I think that is, quite exciting in that is then a much lower square foot cost out in that setting. And so it's really twofold. It's a lower cost, and it just works better functionally and operationally for the vehicle flow into those areas through here, parking here to go into quartermaster or evidence and property. This also provides an opportunity for the public to, from this more public lot, pull up here and get something from property and evidence that's being returned to them. That's always a hard little conundrum to solve in a lot of police facilities. So that became option A.
That's very much what you saw when you visited Grapevine, if you remember that. With Grapevine.
Okay, thanks. I think one thing we need to hit is that this is a 5-day
Big team did,
fire station.
but I just took the council.
When, down at the bottom, you mentioned the 2 versus 3 stories. It's still, regardless of the story structure, 116,000 square feet.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. So remember that this is 96.7. So what we're promising the voters here is this entire facility at the end of the day, and it has the escalation built into it. Another option would be to promise a 108,300 square foot facility that would meet a lot of the needs in the short term, and it would have an 81,000 square foot police department, and we would defer 4,000 square feet into the future. So the purpose of this is to reduce the amount of money that we borrow now, and we promise, we design A, but we say, hey, a piece of A, we're not gonna give you now. And with the fire department, we pull 2 bays out and build a 3-bay fire station. And then have 2 bays that can be added on. And when these alternates are built, it will still meet the needs that we project that you'll have. And when you build the alternates, it's still an A facility. And instead of borrowing the 96.7 now, you would borrow 93.8, and we would have these alternates pulled out. So it's still, full program is 96.7, but it would allow you to borrow less money and have the ability to deliver a full, the full program at some point. So that, Todd?
So visually, this is the 2 bays peeled off of the main apparatus bays. Easy to expand to that side to add those 2 bays, be it as we discovered during construction, depending on the bidding market, or later on. And then the other 4,000 square feet is really just, conditioned space living on the first floor of that garage. We would make, some decisions as to what really truly need to be conditioned, what could just still be improved to being under shelter but not being conditioned. And here again, that can easily be filled into the future.
And so that still gets you back to the 116,300 square feet. So any questions on option A or A1?
Can you go back to the last slide?
Sure. This one?
That one, yeah. So with the alternates, I mean, if we put that off until later.
2.9 could change.
I mean, that 2.9 could realistically be inflated,
I would
right?
say that there's a certainty that would
Yes.
take place.
So it's really not 96.7 anymore to get the full 116. It's gonna end up being more to
Right.
do it separately. Maybe the hope is that we're able to, that as we get into construction, things start coming back down, then we can add those in, right, within that amount, but.
Well, it's the difference
There's no
between what you promised to the voters, right? So you promised the full 116,000 foot program, you have to borrow the money, assuming inflation keeps going, right? You're absolutely correct. This 2.9, if it goes up 10% a year, which is where we think it's going to be for at least through 2023, you'd be looking at 30% more to be 4 million, and then there's the interest rate piece too, right? Which, we have right now a very favorable market. I mean, only someone who wasn't very intelligent would say they know where interest rates are going, but I think there's 2 pieces there, right? What does it cost to borrow the money, and it's a sources and uses piece, right?
So, just out of curiosity, we talked about renting space being included in that 96.7 million.
Right.
What ballpark estimate would that rental piece be?
We were using about $20.25 a square foot. We have a very detailed estimate that shows, Don and I went through every single person that had to move and how many square feet they needed. And we'd have to move records and a whole bunch of different pieces. But we're looking at about $1 million in rental and move costs, and about $1 million in construction cost. Because we have to, whatever space we rent, we've got to put in a locker room and break rooms and conference rooms and temporary property and evidence, crime scene.
So we're gonna have some of that regardless of, even if we put it in our own facility, we would have to do some of those.
The first
$1 million
piece,
of-
you would
So
avoid half of
we would
that.
save $1 million, which gets us a little bit into that 2.9, just
Yes,
saying.
right. So, I mean, this is us making sure this deep dive that we went through is what we do on every project before we say, hey, we can give you this for this much money, we're not going to be short. And that's important, and especially in volatile times like now. But yes, we could save $1 million if we could find a place to put them.
I mean, we've talked about, I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
about all kinds of alternatives. I mean, you do have the community room, maybe you don't lease the community room, you have that space. We have 2 gyms over at Fred Herring, maybe you use that as an alternative. So, I mean, our preference would certainly be to use city facilities. One, with the technology, it's much better. I mean, Chris controls it.
Exactly.
And that's
Much
a
more
lot.
secure.
It's more secure, yes, so.
I think it's important if we're gonna take, I did call Brandon yesterday, the money guy. The numbers guy. I had some real concern bringing this during coming off the pandemic and stuff like that to the voters. So I went out and I did a bunch of research on all the propositions in May. Okay, and facilities propositions. And every one of them passed except Rowlett's Proposition B was on parks. It did not. And there were like 15 to 20 other cities and all of their facilities propositions passed. So that just kind of, you know. But I do think it's important when we do take it to the citizens to say, this goes to build out. We're not coming back to you in another 8 years or 10 years because something wasn't done and now we're going to have to catch up with it. That this is, you know, and taking a chance on, the world is tilted on its axis. So there's no telling what that 2.9 million could be in 3 years, or much less this time next year.
I would agree. The only downside to the research findings that you brought to the table today is that there's 15 design teams increasing that demand side of the curve in my world, which, you know, they've got a 6-month start on us, right? But, oh well, right? That's America.
Quick question for our fire chief. What's the demand pushing to a 5-bay versus our traditional 3-bay?
Central is our busiest district and probably will stay that way from now on. So we'll be looking at double companying probably to meet the demands for service. We run an EMS captain out of there. Our co-care will probably end up running out of there. So there's just extra units that will be coming to get us to full build out.
Thank you.
Any other questions on A or A1?
Is code requiring the storm shelter, or is that just a function of the police and fire department?
Code.
That is a 2016 introduction in the code of the IBC, International Building Code, that now requires 5 building types to have a storm shelter rated for 250 miles an hour to protect staff waiting rescue for a minimum of 2 hours. And it's police, it's fire, it's 911 communications, it's schools, and it's hospitals. And so, you know, if you, I don't know if you can go back to,
You want the shared slide?
but if you can just go back one.
Sure.
So that's a great thing I've really forgot to mention. So again, as I'm always looking to try to find ways to flex spaces, and the more I can flex it, the less square footage is taken up. This became a golden opportunity down here to, one, address the training needs. And right now for public safety, training, and the highlight that's been put on that the last year and a half. It also then becomes the EOC. And so EOCs need to be hardened and also we look at, codes require we have a storm shelter. So there's 3 functions all being overlaid into just one setting, and in one fell swoop you've accomplished all 3 of those.
Certainly the cost for that one little section is going to be quite a bit higher.
Oh yes, you are right. It actually has to be designed to where the whole rest of this building can blow way down the street and that bunker remains in place.
So it'll stand up to an F5.
Yes.
Worse than, I think it was F5 135. this is 250
Okay.
mile an hour projectile.
That's wonderful.
Everybody else.
Are you sure 6,000 square foot is enough?
Well,
At least
he's the
it's-
expert.
And again,
Yeah,
Square feet.
I want to buy a quarter.
And this is for, really staff and first responders. It's always a discussion, we get a design of, well, gosh, we open this up to the public, and it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, to your point, the cost of that it's more intended really for all these staff to be able to be housed and be kept safe.
I'm building them for schools right now, and it's an interesting cost that we didn't project, so.
Okay. So this is the slide we were looking at. This is option B. Option B was to do a 100,000 square foot facility, which is about 5,000 square feet less than what we were contemplating in 2020. And as a model, the full build-out projections will be met for 12 to 15 years. Overall facility is a B. The police facility is a B+. The fire facility is C. And the compromise is that fire loses 2 bays, but they could be added back later. And PD loses 11,000 square feet. And you may remember that in A1, we had 7,700 square feet of alternates, right? So we can add back some of that. And the cost of that is $89.2 million. So the graphic for that.
So here's our challenge on this one. It starts taking on some of A1, and that later on we can add these 2 apparatus bays. Here, as Chris mentioned, can be the, infilling of the rest of the conditioned spaces in the garage. The hardest element is losing, about 8,000 square feet of the police footprint, and the challenge of trying to do an addition in the future to add that back. Within police, it's like 10 little different cities with all their departments, and they all grow at different rates. Investigations may need, 6 additional people between now and, 12 years down the road, whereas, another department might have very little growth. But there are strategic ways I've done before to where we could leave a sliver here between, this edge, maybe the existing jail, that depending on how we backfill on the different levels there, to try to hit the highest growth candidates, typically nationally, which is always investigations, and then some in the patrol area. But it becomes a bit of a challenge of how you then sort of reshuffle the internal pieces to add in that 8,000 square feet later.
Okay. Any questions on B?
How long have we been talking about this facility? How many years?
Oh geez, we actually started talking about it when we put together the 2015 bond program.
Okay, so we're already 6 years in. By the time we get it built, it's gonna be another, 3, 4, 5 years? So
When is
that's
that
12 to 15 years that it gets us, it seems like it's not even worth doing. You know what I mean? Because by the time we finally get it built, we're gonna be at a place where we're talking about expansion again.
And how you can absorb some of that growth, maybe that 15 can be pushed outwards maybe to 18. But it's really then starting to take up some of the conference rooms in the building are reallocated to put bodies in. Maybe you reallocate some storage settings to put people in. I've seen it happen in facilities.
Where we are right now.
You're right, exactly. And that's the compromises you start making to get more people.
The other thing we haven't talked about is recruitment and retention and morale. So those are the 3 legs of the stool. I'm sure you've talked about it a lot in this room, but not in relation to this facility. You are in a market right now where we are competing with cities are cannibalizing each other's public safety departments, and people have choices, right? And there's a lot of brand new police department headquarters being built. We're working on a few of them, actually.
Yes.
So these are all things you need to bring into the mix, but our job was to come up with as many options that were viable as possible. And there's an alternative that works for this group. That's why we're here tonight, is to see which of these you want to know more about. So this is option C. This is seeing how close we could get to that $80 million number that you were talking about earlier this year, and what would that look like if we just spent the 80 million? This is short for quartermaster. Special vehicles is pretty obvious, but so this is just the fire administration, quartermaster, and special vehicles. Police department headquarters and fire administration is what that's for. Those needs would be almost met. The overall facility grade is C. The police facility grade is an A. It's not too far off from where they were before. Fire administration gets everything they need. We don't build a new fire station. It's really the way we get there with this one.
I don't think that's an option.
Well, I mean, it says option.
I know it
Well, we were
says. It
just
can say anything.
we were told to find a way to get to a number that is, what does it look like if we spend just that much money?
Right.
So those are sort of the guardrails, right? And those are the operational, and so we're at 78.7 million. So that looks like this.
So yes, that was one of the assignments, was finding something that gets us down under 80 million, and the only way to get a big enough chunk of real estate, we can't just cut police in half and give them less than they have now, or same with fire admin. So this takes police back up close to their original long-term needs. Same with fire admin. Parking garage stays, close to the same with just a few little cuts, but the only way to get that chunk of money moved out of the project is there is no fire station. And it could be that creatively fire admin is on a second floor, literally on stilts, and there's parking underneath, and somewhere down the road that gets infilled for the firehouse, and we add the apparatus space. But yes, I can sympathize with your quick assessment and comments. I agree, but it's the only way to really find that chunk.
Well, it's option C for a reason, because it's crap.
Okay, well, I can edit this.
Yes.
I can edit this slide if we could edit this slide.
Somebody can come up with an acronym, I'm sure.
So,
When you get asked,
Yeah.
you know what you lost, right?
so that was a lot of information fairly quickly, so we threw in this comparison slide so that you could see them all side by side. We're stacked on top of each other, I guess.
Y'all took a lot of information and made it very succinct. Thank you.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Questions?
Comments? I just think if we're going to do this, we need to do it right.
Donna, what do you need from us?
Well, you're going to have to make a decision on what you want to do, because we have to call this election by August 16th. That's your second meeting in August. So you have some time to think. I mean, we're going to have a budget workshop, so we'll talk about bond program a little bit then, but by August 16th, we need to call an election, if you want to have it for next November.
What is the timeline on this, as far as election and bill?
Got it.
I can, so that's what the question you just asked and she answered is there, these two, and then this is the timeline. We would suggest that we start the design team selection process now, or in August-ish. There is some expense there, but there'd be no payments to the architect. It'll take us 90 to 120 days to hire an architect. So when the bond passes, if you wait till then, you're just losing 4 4 months' worth of escalation. Then the bond issue goes in front of the voters, I believe that's the Tuesday, right?
That's correct.
And then we would begin the design process on the 9th.
Assuming.
Yeah, so
Assuming it passes.
so what would happen is at the Monday council meeting on the 8th, you would approve their contract and then they would get a notice to proceed the next day. And then we would begin construction in December of the following year with the parking structure and some of those parking lots. And then we would phase through all the phases.
What's the big deal? We've got to get out and sell it to the voters. If you guys call the election, that's the next step is
Gotta get after it.
we have to get out and get in front of this with the voters.
Well, under option A, we can go to the voters and tell them that this is going to be fully built out. When we can go to the voters and say our debt's going to be flat.
That's your biggest selling point.
Yeah, and now's the time, with the interest rates being so low, I've been digging and reading into this since 9:30 a.m. yesterday morning. If I'm going to get behind something, it is going to be full build out. Because the last thing that we need is to go back and then back and then back. It needs to be done right. And the voters will buy into facts. They've proven it all over the Metroplex in May. I would have no more thought about putting a $200 million bond package on a May election.
I wouldn't have.
Yeah, but
I applaud you for the homework. I can attest to the fact that in the previous 3 years and what I'm currently involved in moving forward, that just in the Metroplex area, there will be approximately 15 to 16 brand spanking new police headquarters.
police and fire.
True, but there are 3 of those I know of that I've worked on, are police and fire. But for the police side, as Chris mentioned, that, retention, recruitment,
Right.
that's what's happening with all your neighbors in the Metroplex.
Yes, it is. Now, let me ask you this. In relationship to the how big is the Grand Prairie building?
I don't know.
I didn't look at that final square feet.
Grand Prairie.
How big was it?
Yeah, how big is it? It's larger than 116,000.
Yes.
It's like, what,
It
300,000?
looks huge. I don't.
Yeah, it was
It
huge.
is huge, I don't
Yeah,
know that
I think it's twice that size.
probably.
And what drove a lot of that size was it's a very large jail component. And then, yes, the meeting room upon meeting room upon meeting room, when you go through that building, it's just, seems like there's 20 large meeting rooms. And so, yes, it is significantly larger.
Sure is pretty.
It is, I agree.
149,000 square feet.
There you go, okay.
It's 149,000?
We'll call it.
Oh, it's not as big as I thought it was.
Let's stay where it is.
Wow.
And it is a jail, so it's
But
not that much bigger.
Yeah.
What's the square footage of our jail, Chief?
I don't know that.
So,
Mark one.
I'll jump in and I'll just say, it's really, the only 2 options really are A and A1, which is, and that $2.9 million number is, kind of in the air because we don't know what it's actually going to be. At least with this, we've met our goal. We know what we can do. And I'm assuming we're going to do a CMAR with this again. So it's going to be a back and forth battle on how we're going to design this thing out anyway. And like we saw with Thrive, how we might not be able to do this, but we figured out a way in that phase. I just think, you do it once, measure what they say, measure twice, cut once.
Measure twice, cut once.
I almost said it the wrong way, but I mean,
you almost said it the way I do it.
Yeah.
You're not the only one, pal.
Dang it.
But I mean, let's get it's not just for retention of fire and police, it's actually for the service of the residents of.
Yes,
that's correct.
And so, I think that we can sell that and educate them on what we need to do between now and.
It is going to be, I mean,
It's not,
when they're talking, when you when you put in the interest rates now, I was very apprehensive about this. When you put in what the interest rates are, I mean, we're gonna have to have something. And if this can meet all those goals, it's gonna make them happy. It is,
And you avoid having to invest in old facilities.
Yes.
Keith took a look at that too.
What's that maintenance number?
Yeah, I'm looking at
Been like
Keith.
for the last couple of years?
Yeah, so just operation and maintenance cost of the facilities, we're running on average about $56,000 a year for PD and $53,000 for central fire. But we've got deferred maintenance out there, capital cost of 1.7 for the PD building. That includes a new roof. It includes the generator that didn't provide enough electricity that we needed during the winter storm, HVAC in that building, and then we got $620,000 in central fire. That's a roof that we've deferred, some other issues that if we don't do it.
We're duct taping is what we're
Yeah,
doing.
we're duct taping.
We're spending all this money and all we're doing is duct taping it.
Yeah.
On the design team, does that include our end users in those buildings, our frontline firefighters and police officers, and who else is gonna be in there?
Dispatch will be in there.
Dispatch and
Jail will stay with
records, is that gonna include their input on this?
On selecting the architect, we'll have an evaluation.
Oh, no.
She's talking about the actual
Or
design.
design of the
design
facility?
process.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
You want to talk about that, kind of the process that we be following?
Yes, so, we would hit the ground running, probably with that updated needs assessment that was just completed. There's no need to do any validation or waste any time on that, but it would be immediately, with the fire chief and police chief forming a senior leadership group is what I usually recommend, have great success with. But outwards from there will be each and every user group. I mean, right, and especially.
We leave the inmates out of it.
And especially including, I usually call them sometimes the lost souls or forgotten souls, when you're starting a new building, facilities, custodial, IT, they need to have a seat at the table during all those initial meetings.
Believe me, they won't let you forget here.
They will if they're not invited to the table, though.
No, they'll be required.
And yes, from that process, you will get a lot of wants, but I have found time and time again, it's just the fact that they were invited to sit down, to voice their opinion, to have input, and they're good. And then they I think realize they can't necessarily get everything. There is a budget and there are compromises to be made, but yes, we'll go through that kind of a process.
Yeah, so Eric, why don't you talk a little bit about what we did with Thrive, because we went through that very process.
A very open public building. It's the most touchable building we've done probably in the history of the city. So we had active adults, we had recreation, we had all types of stakeholder inputs at special events, at the gymnasium there at Memorial. We had multiple nights through several months of, put a dot on what you like, very much like the overall stakeholder in the early days of 2025. We went through that with Thrive, and that continued along the way until we had all the input from the community. Then we formed every department team from day one, and Chris was a part of that each department had input along the way, not only just great ideas, but where we needed catwalks early on in the project from facilities maintenance, locations of, from a facility standpoint, from fire, from code, from building, from planning, from parks and recreation, from finance, how that was formulated. That was a team of staff that was in and out for, I would say, 24 to 28 months of high intensity teamwork, not only in the design, but how the project would be built, managed all the way through. This will be very similar, different form, but we do already have a staff of our committee made up of all departments at this point, making sure that we don't leave anything out. And that will get bigger as we go along. We will do a CMAR. These gentlemen are showing you the full spectra. There is contingency here. There's, again, some value engineering, and I use that term in this case of these gentlemen, that is the real deal. That Councilman Jones, you're exactly right, that we did afford those alternates, and we had economy of scale that, we started up with 2 old patch buildings with a very patched up parking lot. We built the whole thing. So we'll still go through this same process, whether it's 96.7, whatever option y'all choose, that process will still go on all the way through the end of this project and then through the maintenance of it.
And Eric will be the coach on this again, just like he was on Thrive.
Awesome.
William, you got any comments or questions as we go through this?
I will say that I'm definitely on board with A or A1. I've actually personally gone through a renovation of a school, 4,000 students and 400 teachers, and I can tell you that if you don't do this all at once, you're going to lose all the information and play you've got from police and fire. And I can tell you the worst part of this whole thing is nobody wants to move. So so whatever pain you got to go through, you want to go through now, and you want to get all the input that you've got from all these people all at once, and it sounds like what you're doing is going through all these departments, talking to all these folks. So you're expending all this energy. Why would you want to do that again? It's so laborious to do that, to drop everything and try to bring it back. Like if you were to do the police station and bring the fire back, and you almost got to go back and look at the police again. It's just not, it's not a workable deal at all. And so there's going to be some pain, but let's go through the pain once and not twice.
Let's say that one more item. Keep in mind, council, that this is a campus, that Parks and Recreation will be moving over to Herring, so they will come out of the annex and they will be over there. Annex will start renovation, so you have the annex, you have the library, you have court, you have IT, you have Parks and Recreation, you have, of course, Central Fire, police admin, the jail facility, and then our neighbors, probably leaving someone out, but again, our neighbors with the county. So Civic Circle with Main and Valley Parkway, it's a pie-shaped or baseball field-shaped property. We will have an opportunity here to square up the parking on the entire site. In my opinion, make it much better. The flow of traffic through the site will be much better. And keep in mind, we're just kicking off Valley Parkway and Civic Circle now with the new capital project, so that will be a good thing. So this will fold right into the overall municipal campus, and I think fit nicely. The good thing here is we believe that the parking works here much better.
One thing I also would say too is, I know you've got the one alternate. I mean, based on my field too, we use more than, maybe you might want to consider more than one, although maybe choose as an accounting tool more than anything else, not just that we're not going to do it, but in a worst case scenario, what would happen?
Totally agree, and that reinforces, Chris, how you manage the risk is with the scope. And so yes, the recent project Chris and I worked on for Richardson Police and Fire, my gosh, I think we ended up with 8 or 9 alternates. And luckily, I think we successfully implemented all 9 by the end of the project. But you're right, to just have that flexibility to control things.
We're using kind of a 95%, designed to CCL and 5% alternates, but which I may be pumping that up with this escalation, but I think that just kind of helps you out. Then you automatically know, okay, well, we don't have to do this, but
And once we get more into design, that'll be easier for us, obviously, to come up with. I forget how many alternates we had with Thrive.
We had quite a few. The most memorable was the dichroic glass.
Yes, I do.
But we had 2 very big ones that were site related, and we had a bunch of minor ones.
6 or 7, it seems like.
Yeah, it was several $1 million all told.
Bob, anything to add to the conversation?
Not a whole lot. I'm all for A.
Okay.
I don't see any reason. I don't see any reason for putting off, $3 million of 90. I mean, get it done, and I think we can convince the voters.
The only comment I was going to make was about the investment that we're putting into these facilities that Keith already gave his input on. So, I mean, I think that closes the gap. So,
Right.
I'm not worried about option A.
I'm not at all worried about residents. They have supported us on everything that we've done financially. We deliver on time and on budget, and who's not going to back the blue in our fire department? I mean, in Louisville, it's not our culture. So not worried about it at all.
Because I would offer up something I can forward to Donna if you want, is that on a lot of these bond propositions, there will be a variety of people that, the constituents that will go, how in the world can this be possibly cost this much money? $500 plus a square foot. And from being at that position enough times, I have a list of about 20 items, from the ballistic hardening, the 911 communication center hardening, full emergency power, redundant systems, just by its very nature of being police and fire, is designed to a higher level by the building code, a 1.25 factor instead of 1.0. And so I've developed that. If it would, be a benefit or help.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That would be great.
I'm sure the storm shelter.
Forgot the storm shelter.
I had a storm shelter too.
I mean, when you have a 40-year-old house that's going for $185,000 square foot in Louisville now, you're going to question a $500 square foot?
And Councilmember Jones just mentioned February and the weather that we had, and the ability to have a facility that can survive that and provide a place where those first responders can be. Yeah.
That'd be nice.
Safely.
Yeah.
So all things I think that play well into this. But yes, any support you could give us. I mean, I'm just sitting here going, here's a guy who loves his job. I mean, I can absolutely tell you love doing this and presenting this information, and we're grateful to have a team like you guys to get us where we need to go. But I think you've got direction.
I think I do. Mr. Penke will be moving quickly to meet with Don and pick up those points and develop an education plan.
Getting your architect on board is a great idea too, early, so
It saves us 90 days.
And that there was Chris's idea that, there's sort of, he gave the visual of, the horses are hitched to the wagon, and come November 2nd, all you gotta do is go.
Put a driver.
Yes, exactly, giddy up and go.
Excellent. Well, if there's no other questions,
I know what you do.
Okay.
then I think we are done here with our workshop, and we'll go ahead and take I'm gonna claim executive privilege. We're gonna take a couple-minute break here.
No.
We'll jump into regular session.
Back to you.
Let's be ready in about 5. About 5. 6 minutes and 12 seconds is all you got.
So that was on me, I'm sorry. I knew y'all had a stack now, so. I appreciate that.
How you been? I'm doing great, thanks. Thanks for that backup, Keith.
If you want to get out of here early, I'll just give you the leg up there. Back down to the normal.
Oh, you got to see this. Hodgepodge of stuff. Making it work.
So you want a wall between us? Okay. Good to know. Good to know. That was a little bit hurtful, don't you think? I have been. Go off. Come on.
What is your problem today?
I've been told I look puffy and my eyes are baggy. I was like, no, it's because I didn't sleep all weekend. That's why.
It's the not sleeping and it's the fungus.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I do. We're again doing Ronnie. No, Patricia.
Seems a little different, doesn't it?
It's been a while.
Maybe I can hear today. How are you?
This time it was me.
No.
Okay, there we go.
Feels good in here.
You noticed last time you made the motions, my name came in?
I try to not get that dead in the weeds.
Counting hundreds real
I was like,
quick.
okay, somehow, I didn't think I was touching that, but no.
I used to be able to count change without looking at it, about the way it thudded. Quarters and nickels and dimes. Pennies you had to watch, but.
I guess James Country's saying the library stuff, I guess. Okay. To send.
Oh, I didn't know you're fine.
All right, we're now going to move into regular session. If we could, please begin with the invocation given to us by Councilmember Meredith, followed by the flags from Councilmember Cade.
Please bow your head for a moment of silence. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
There's no comma.
Cadence.
Thank you.
It's cadence, yes. I like that.
All right, regular session, item C, public hearing. Continued public hearing, consideration of an ordinance pursuant to section 311.003 of the Texas Tax Code, amending tax increment reinvestment zone number 3, TERS 3, located south of State Highway 121 and Business 121, and being wholly located within the extraterritorial jurisdiction of Lewisville, Texas, by amending its boundaries and its benefits to the city of Lewisville and amending the project and finance plan for the zone. Administrative comments, the ordinance amends the boundaries of TERS 3 to include park and open space land. The proposed boundaries include an additional approximate 53.05 acres, generally located south of State Highway 121 and Business 121, and being wholly located within the ETJ of the city. This ordinance also amends the project and finance plan to update project costs and zone reimbursements, including the acquisition of park and open space land, and to include Economic Development Authority. And the recommendation is to continue the public hearing to the August 2nd, 2021 meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to continue the public hearing to the August 2nd, 2021 City Council meeting.
I have a motion. I need a second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please. Well, actually, since we're computer voting now over here, if you would all please vote. Motion passes 5-0. Item 2, making sure I got my page here. Item 2, public hearing, consideration of Lewisville juvenile curfew ordinance and consideration of a resolution to continue the current ordinance. This is the second public hearing being held in accordance with provisions of the Local Government Code, Section 370.002, in order to allow public input regarding the city's juvenile curfew ordinance adopted September 12, 1994. The City Council may abolish, continue, or modify the ordinance. and it is the recommendation that the City Council conduct a public hearing and approve a resolution to continue the current city juvenile curfew ordinance as set forth in the caption above. If there are no comments, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
I have a motion. I need a second. I have a second. If council would please vote. Motion passes. I will entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. If council would please vote. Motion passes 5-0. Item D, Visitor Citizen Forum. At this time, any person with business before the council not scheduled on the agenda may speak to the council. No formal action can be taken on these items at this meeting. Any person wanting to speak remotely may join the meeting through our Zoom or call our toll-free number. Those are all listed on the notes for the meeting. Speakers must address their comments to the mayor rather than to individual council members or staff. Speakers should speak clearly and state their name or address prior to beginning their remarks. Speakers will be allowed 5 minutes for testimony. Speakers making personal, impertinent, profane, or slanderous remarks may be removed from the meeting. Unauthorized remarks from the audience, stamping of feet, whistles, yells, clapping, and similar demonstrations will not be permitted. Speakers attending the meeting remotely are asked to email their contact information for the record to citysecretary@cityoflewisville.com. In accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, the City Council is restricted from discussing or taking action on items not listed on the agenda. Action can only be taken at a future meeting. City Secretary, do we have any public comment? All right. Item E, consent agenda. All the following items on the consent agenda are considered to be self-explanatory by the council and will be enacted with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so request. For a citizen to request removal of an item, a speaker card or e-comment must be filled out and submitted to the City Secretary. City Secretary, do we have any requests? All right. City Council?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Council, if you would please vote. Consent agenda is approved 5-0. Item F, regular hearing. Ratification of the First Amendment to Economic Development Agreement between the City of Louisville and Deck on Main, LLC, and authorization for the city manager to execute the agreement. Deck on Main, LLC has purchased the .334 acre tract at the northeast corner of Charles Street and Main Street from the city in accordance with the Economic Development Agreement executed on May 12, 2021. The First Amendment needed to be signed prior to closing and now requires ratification. It did not increase or change any incentive amount previously offered. It only changed the timing of the developer's reimbursement for land purchase costs to be paid at time of closing rather than after closing, and it corrected the legal description for the property being sold. It is city staff's recommendation that the council ratify the First Amendment to the Economic Development Agreement as set forth in the caption above.
Mayor, I'm going to recuse myself from this item.
Thank you, Councilmember Green. Council, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second. Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by voting. I'll figure it out someday. All right, motion passes 4-0. If anyone could welcome Councilmember Green back. Item 7, continued item, consideration of an amendment to the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Reimbursement Agreement by and among the City of Louisville, the Louisville Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Number 3, TERS 3, and Bright Realty LLC for project costs within Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Number 3, and authorization for the city manager to execute the agreement. The recommendation is that we continue this item to the August 2nd, 2021 meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to continue this item to the August 2nd, 2021 City Council meeting.
I have a motion and a second. Council, if you would please vote. Motion passes 5-0. Item 8, consideration of 5 alternative standards associated with facade changes and landscaping for Northern Tool located at 2428 South Stemmons Freeway. legally described as Lake Point Phase 5 Edition, Lot 4R-5R, Block H, zoned General Business District as requested by Robbie Killingsworth of France Architects on behalf of Dwayne Boris of Northern Tool, the business owner. Case number 20-04-3-ALT-STD. Administrative comments are that Northern Tool is moving to a new lease space at 2428 South Simmons Freeway with the core sub-districts of the IH-35E overlay district. Facade improvements are proposed to better reflect the company branding. Facade changes require compliance with the IH-35E overlay standards regarding articulation, entrances, materials and colors, awnings and canopies, windows, and tree and plant materials. 5 alternative standards are requested. A, to reduce the doors and windows on the ground floor from the required 60% to 9%, a 75% reduction. B, to reduce the brick or stone facade requirements from 80 to 8% on the front west elevation, a 90% reduction. C, to reduce the canopy length along the facade from the required 75 to 29%, a reduction of 61%. D, to allow storage of trailers on the west side of the building screened by a tubular steel fence with living screening on the west elevation in lieu of placing the storage behind the building. And E, to reduce the landscape standards for parking lots from 20 canopy trees to 8 canopy trees and 7 ornamental trees and add new plantings to existing landscape areas only. The Overlay District Board recommended unanimous approval 7-0 of all 5 alternative standards on July 6, 2021. And the recommendation is that the City Council approve the 5 alternative standards as set forth in the caption above. Mr. Richard Lutke, our planning director, is available for questions, or if you have comments, sir.
None, Mayor.
Council, if there are any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the 5 alternative standards.
Move to approve the 5 alternative
standards.
All right.
I'll give it to Bob.
I got a motion. I need a second.
Second.
Thank you, sir. Council, if you would please vote. Motion passes 5-0. Item 9, consideration of a variance to the Louisville City Code Section 2-201 fee schedule regarding a waiver of athletic field rental fees and temporary event permit fees associated with the Battle of the Badge Benefit Softball Tournament. Since 2005, the Louisville Citizens Police Academy Alumni Association has been conducting the Battle of the Badge Benefit Softball Tournament. The Louisville Police and Fire Departments and other local fire and police departments compete in the tournament to raise money for Spirit of a Hero. Battle of the Badge will take place on October 16, 2021 at Railroad Park. Associated fees for the event are estimated to be $1,444. It is the recommendation that City Council approve the variance as set forth in the caption above. Ms. Stacy Anaya, our Parks and Recreation Director, is available for questions.
The only question I have, Mr. Mayor, is who's going to come out on top?
Yeah, who's going to come out on top? And yeah, let's ask the chiefs.
So who's throwing the first pitch?
Any comments?
Who you got, Stacy? I'll put you on the spot.
The pitch.
All right. Since there are no questions and just general banter at this point, Council, I would entertain a motion.
Second.
I got a motion and a second. Council, if you would please vote. Motion passes 5-0. Item 10.
I need to recuse myself.
Item 10 is a consideration of a resolution supporting Denton County Transportation Authority's proposed on-demand service delivery model as requested by Mayor T.J. Gilmore and Mayor Pro Tem Kristen Green. The Board of Directors of the Denton County Transportation Authority is considering replacing certain fixed bus routes with an on-demand service delivery model. The on-demand service delivery model is proposed to replace all fixed bus routes in Louisville with an on-demand service that will increase the number of residents and businesses that will have access to mass transit, will reduce wait times for passengers, and will extend the hours in which mass transit is available to Louisville. It's the recommendation that the City Council consider the resolution set forth in the caption above. Ms. Claire Powell, the Assistant City Manager, is available for questions. If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, well, actually, all those who are here, please vote. All right, motion passes 4-0. Thank you, Council. Item 11, consideration of a resolution extending the declaration of local disaster for public health emergency until 11:59 p.m. on August 2nd, 2021. On February 17th, 2021, Mayor Rudy Durham, acting in accordance with authority granted to him under the City Charter and Code of Ordinances and under Section 418.108A of the Texas Government Code, declared a local state of disaster for public health emergency due to concerns related to COVID-19, the disaster declaration, which the Louisville City Council subsequently ratified, supported, and continued until 11:59 p.m. on August 2nd, 2021. Ongoing evaluation of circumstances related to the virus and the updated recommendations of the Centers for Disease Control and Texas Department of State Health Services indicate that the conditions necessitating the disaster declaration have and will continue to exist for a period extending beyond August 2nd, 2021. Recommendation is the council consider the resolution as set forth in the caption above. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Council, if you would please vote. All right, motion passes 5-0. Item G, reports. Reports about items of community interest regarding which no action will be taken. I have here on the list the 2021 health report. Matt, have you got that one?
Yes, this is a report that I provide to City Council per policy each year. And so if you've got any questions for it, I have no presentation, but I can take any questions that you may have.
Council, any questions? I do have one comment. I'm pleased to see that a lot of the proactive measures that were taking place, a lot of the health screenings, as well as helping folks find alternatives to pills and doctor's visits, I think is pretty awesome. We're seeing a shift there in behavior, which is great. So thank you for the update.
Thank you.
Mr. Lutke, I'm looking for reports, so we'll just start with you and work my way across the front, if you don't mind.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Erb?
No report, Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor, just give you an update on the lake level. It's 522.4, getting close back down towards the normal pool elevation. They continue to let out 1,600 cubic feet per second.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lee?
No report, Mayor.
I actually have two reports. One of them, I'm super excited to say that we've submitted the fiscal year 21-22 proposed budget to you electronically. So you should have received an email from me late this afternoon. So that's the report that we will go over on August 7th at the budget workshop. Also, it'll be available on our website tomorrow for anyone else who may want to review it prior to then. And the second report I wanted to talk about was on June 7th. If you'll remember, we came to you to talk with you about the idea of doing little mini surveys through our Zen City platform. And I'm excited to let you know that we actually put our first one out on Friday. And it has to do with recycling. That was one of the topics that you all were interested in. And so it's out for 2 weeks, and the link to that survey has been promoted really well through James's group. So we've got it on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram next door. We see Louisville Leaders had it. So we've got it on our website. So we're super excited to see how that works and see your action that we can get as a result of that survey. So
thank you very much.
Nothing, Mayor.
Chief?
One thing, Mayor, we pushed out on social media drivers that may have handicaps or impediments in communications with law enforcement officers, a way to put an alert on their license plate and driver's license at the request of Councilwoman Kate. It's a great program, and we made it easy and put the step-by-step process on social media, and that'll soon be on our website.
That's great. I actually saw that move across social media pretty well this past week, so it's good to see. Mr. Ferris?
No, sir.
City Attorney? City Secretary? Anything to add? All right, so we're going to do the round robin again. Mr. Meredith?
All right, I've got a couple of things. First of all, I want to congratulate the Parks and Rec team on a very successful duck derby on Saturday. I actually participated, and second year in a row, had a lot of fun. I think she's got some ideas for next year to maybe upgrade the duck derby a little bit, so we'll see how that comes out. Some library activities coming up this week. We've got Teen Craft Night, vinyl decals, Wednesday, July 21st from 6:30 to 7:30. Registration is required, that's at the Hive. Elementary Explorations Geometric Art, that's Thursday, July 22nd from 4 to 5. Registration is required for that also. And the Silhouette Cameo Heat Transfer Vinyl, that sounds interesting, on Friday, July 23rd, and registration is required, and that is also at the Hive. And that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Troyer?
I have a number of things from the Louisville Grand Theater. First of all, every Friday is the Acoustic Jam presented by the Visual Art League of Louisville. And as I've said in the past, it's an amazing jam, and if you haven't experienced it, I strongly encourage you to go down on Friday evening and just enjoy the round robin jam. Another thing, on August 7th, there's a songwriting workshop featuring Terry Hendricks with Lloyd Maines. This is presented by the City of Louisville in the Black Box Theater. Ongoing weekly activities, yoga in the plaza with Blue Andrew Studios on Wednesdays at 6. Pilates in the plaza with Audrey Thursdays at 6. And Tai Chi in the plaza with Lowell Johnson Saturdays at 9:30 a.m. There are 2 art exhibitions going on right now. I Am Woman, an exhibition by Missy Burton. That's going on from July 17th through August 14th, presented by City of Louisville. And Fresh Ideas 2021, presented by the Visual Art League of Louisville. And that also is July 17th through August 14th. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Green?
Back to me. I was just going to mention that we've got 2 more concerts in the summer concert series. There's, I think, Uptown Funk is tomorrow night, which was a really great show, I guess 2 years ago. That was a really fun event. And then there's one more that I'm not recalling the name of the band. But if you haven't come out yet, we've had a fairly mild summer, so come out and enjoy the last 2 opportunities this next couple weeks.
Mr. Jones?
Okay, this is some exciting stuff, but important. The city is seeking input for the recycling program. They're asking residents to take a short survey to provide input. This is important because our program used to have offset our costs, but now they're costing us mostly because of contamination. So let's learn about recycling, and I won't name my wife this time as one of the main culprits.
It's on now.
Oh.
Ms. Kate?
I don't know that I have a report. I have a question, though. I know the lake levels but how's the crappie right now? The crappie.
That's a fish, Keith.
Yeah, it's a fish. It's about, yay. You have to wait for the thump.
My husband can give you that report.
Oh.
It was very good last weekend.
Oh, darn. I just have to give you a hard time. I love to fish crappie. The other thing that I have is, and I forgot to ask this ahead of time, so I'm going to do it right here. And hopefully some of the contractors that are doing this will stop. But the LISD dumpster on the site of the old Delay building that was almost every day at dusk, I see private contractors backing up and unloading all of their stuff into the LISD dumpster at the construction site. And I mean, it's every evening just about.
We will follow up on that.
Okay.
City manager, anything?
No, sir, nothing.
All right. Don't have anything either. Y'all covered it all, which is great. I love the round robin, and I feel like we're hitting a groove now post-COVID, now that I don't have plastic shielding around me. So, folks, if you do have anything on Saturday morning, come, or don't have anything, come out, because I will be doing the Tai Chi out there at 9:30 in the morning. So we'll see you there.
Scary. What are you wearing?
So comfortable clothing. Comfortable clothing, but I will be out there for Tai Chi. It is a great time. We've done it for the last. several times, and I won't name names, but there's another person in this room that Tai Chi's with me, so. But come on out Saturday morning, it's a great time, grab some coffee, and it's a lot of fun. With that, I will, since we do not have any additional closed session, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and I have a second. Council, please vote. 5-0, we are adjourned.